Following on from the previous two videos, you can see here we have the class diagram. Over here we have the code that I've implemented in Visual Basic. First thing we need to do is not worry how the individual lines of code, the statements work. Let's just relate the code to the diagram. The first thing we can see is I've called this class coin flipper. If we have a look at where that is in the code, we can see it's on this line here. Immediately below in the diagram you can see it says heads or tails CL, and I've declared that here on this line, and the position that it's been declared in makes it a class level variable, and you can see I've chosen the type as string because it's going to hold heads or tails. Now of course we don't have that by itself, it's associated with a read-only property procedure, and we can see that that particular code is here, and you can see that we've made that public. And while we're at that statement of making this public, let's just remind ourselves of the class level variable. You can see we made that private. Now the word private and public are referred to as access modifiers. So this line here is at the center of the object, and it's not available to the outside world. But this particular piece of code here, the read-only property procedure, allows access to the private class level variable heads or tails CL. And we can see that this line here is responsible for returning that. So this really here is the mechanism for returning what's at the center of the object. If we come down here, we can see that we have the flip behavior, and this is the code here for the flip behavior. And the algorithm in the center, which is here, I'll describe a little bit later. We now need to test the class by producing an instance of it, and to do that I've developed a Windows Form application on which I've placed a button and a label, and we will click on this button and what will appear in the label is either tails or heads depending on what is randomly selected when we run the program. Now we've seen the collaboration diagram for this already, and I'm just going to put it below again so we can have another look at it, and we can see we have the unnamed instance of Form 1, and we have the named instance of the coin flipper class. And the key things I wish to highlight here is the fact that I'm sending a message called flip, and then I'm sending this message here which is responsible for going to the object coin and returning to the unnamed instance of Form 1 whatever was randomly generated, i.e. heads or tails. Now those two messages there, 1 and 2, tell me what should be inside the flip the coin button. The other thing that I'm interested in is this stereotype here, because that sets up the relationship between the unnamed instance of Form 1 and the coin instance of the coin flipper class. This snippet of code here is in fact the definition of Form 1, the Form 1 class, i.e. this as shown in the collaboration diagram. Let's have a look at this word association here, and what we can see that to achieve that association I've created the instance of the coin flipper class on this line here in the class level position for declaring variables. The next thing we need to do is to have a look at message 1, which is this flip here. Now where does that appear in the code? Well, it's this line. What about the second message here that appears in the collaboration diagram? Well, that is this line of code here. So this one is message 1 and this one is message 2. Now of course when we get the value heads or tails back from the coin instance of the coin flipper class, it's assigned to this variable here, which we can see was declared on this line. And what we then do, we copy that variable, which we can see here, to the text property of the label that we saw on the form a moment ago. And the name of that particular label I gave this here in the properties when I built the graphical user interface. And if we have a look at the name I give to the button, we can see it is here. So now what I'm looking at is precisely what was defined to me by the collaboration diagram. Here we can see the runtime for the program, and if I click on this button here we can see that we have tails displayed in the label. I click on the button again and we can see we had tails again. Do it one more time. Now we can see we had heads. I'll do it again. We can see it's tails, and again it's tails, and again on this time we can see it's head. So it does appear to be working as we would wish.